My parents gave my sister $50,000 and told me I was worthless. 2 years later, my father was dying and they called only me, not my sister, not anyone else, just me. I thought I was going back for closure. But what I found in that house, it wasn't closure. It was the beginning of something I never saw coming. And by the time I learned the truth, it was already too late to turn back. My parents gave my sister $50,000 and denied me a cent, saying, "You don't deserve anything." 2 years later, they called me back. And I answered the phone. That might sound like a small thing, a simple decision, the kind of thing you do without thinking. But for me, it was everything. It was the closing of a circle, the first step into a room I had sworn I would never enter again. It was the sound of a past I had tried to bury, ringing insistently on my silent, modern phone. The screen glowed with a name I hadn't seen in 2 years. Mom. I stared at it, my coffee growing cold in my hand. My heart, the one I'd spent 2 years carefully repairing, began to beat a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. The memories, which I had locked away in a steel box and thrown into the deepest part of my mind, started to rattle the lid. They didn't come as pictures first, but as feelings. The coldness of a house that was supposed to be a home. The sharp, slicing sound of my mother's voice. The heavy silence of my father, which was somehow even worse. And the look on my sister's face, a mixture of triumph and pity, as she clutched a check that should have been a symbol of our shared future, but instead became the emblem of my utter erasure. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how my family broke me, and how I, piece by agonizing piece, put myself back together, only to have them try to shatter me all over again. 2 years. It felt like a lifetime, and also like it was just yesterday. 2 years since I packed my single, worn-out suitcase and walked out of the house where I grew up, the house that had become a foreign and hostile territory. I didn't look back. I was so full of pain and rage that I couldn't see the street in front of me. I just walked, my footsteps echoing on the pavement, each one a promise that I would never be that powerless, that invisible, that worthless again. I had always been the invisible one, the quiet one, the one who got good grades but never made a fuss, who helped with the dishes, who listened to my sister, Elena, talk for hours about her dreams and problems. I was the supportive background character in the movie of my family. Elena was the star. She was beautiful, vibrant, and charismatic. Everything she touched seemed to turn to gold. She had the magnetic personality, the effortless charm, and my parents' unwavering adoration. It wasn't that they didn't love me. It was that their love for Elena was a blazing sun, and the love they had for me was a flickering candle in a drafty room. I always knew it, deep down. It was in the way my mother would light up when Elena walked into a room, while my own presence was acknowledged with a distracted, "Oh, Clara, you're home." It was in the way my father would spend hours teaching Elena to fix his car, while I was told to go help your mother. Growing up in that house, I learned to make myself small. I learned to not have needs, because my needs were always secondary to Elena's desires. If I wanted something, I had to wait. If Elena wanted something, it appeared instantly. I remember one Christmas when I was 12. I had asked for a simple art set, just some colored pencils and a sketchbook. I loved to draw. It was my secret escape, the one place where I could create a world where I mattered. On Christmas morning, I found a beautiful, expensive art set under the tree. My heart soared, but before I could even touch it, Elena snatched it up. "Oh, this is perfect for me," she declared. "I've been wanting to take up drawing." My mother just smiled. "Of course, sweetheart, it's yours." Then she handed me a plain, unremarkable sweater. "Here, Clara, this should fit you." I wore that sweater for years, even though I hated it. I wore it because it was all I had. I wore it because I had learned that fighting for what I wanted was pointless. It only led to disappointment, and the sharp sting of being reminded that I was less important. This dynamic continued through our teenage years. Elena was the popular one, the one with the perfect grades, though I later learned she often cheated, the one with the endless stream of admirers. I was the quiet one, the bookworm, the girl who spent her weekends volunteering at the local animal shelter. My parents saw Elena's activities as signs of greatness. They saw mine as just something to fill the time. "Elena is going places," my father would say, beaming with pride as she talked about her latest social triumph. "Clara is so dependable," my mother would add, in a tone that somehow made it sound like an insult. "She'll always be here." They were right, I was always there. I was there when Elena needed help with her homework. I was there when she needed a ride to a party. I was there when she needed someone to cover for her lies. I was the loyal, dependable, invisible sister. And I thought that if I was good enough, if I was helpful enough, eventually they would see me. Eventually, they would love me the way they loved her. But the day of the money changed everything. It ended any pretense of equality, any illusion that I was a valued member of their unit. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the declaration, the final pronouncement, the cruel verdict that echoed in the empty spaces of my heart. The day was a Tuesday. I remember that because it was the day I got my acceptance letter to the State University's graduate program in social work. I was so proud. I had worked 2 jobs to save for the application fees. I had studied endlessly, sacrificing sleep and social outings. I was going to be the first person in our family to get a master's degree. I was going to help people, like I had always wanted to. I was going to make something of myself. The letter was a tangible piece of my future, and I held it in my trembling hands, tears of joy blurring my vision. My heart was so full of hope. I practically floated into the kitchen, where my parents and Elena were having coffee. They were laughing about something, a shared joke that I was, as usual, outside of. But I didn't care. For once, I had my own good news. "Mom, Dad, Elena," I said, my voice shaking with excitement. I got into the master's program. I'm going to graduate school." The laughter stopped. My mother looked at me, but it wasn't the look of pride I had hoped for. It was a look of concern, calculation. She glanced at my father, and he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. A silent conversation had just taken place right in front of me. "That's nice, Clara," my mother said, her voice flat. It was the same tone she used to acknowledge that I had completed my chores. Elena offered a tepid smile. "Oh, cool." I was deflated, but I tried to hold on to my joy. "It's a huge step. I'll need to get a small student loan, and I'll keep working, but—" "Clara, sit down," my father said. His voice was deep and serious, and it sent a chill down my spine. It was the voice he used for bad news. "There's something we need to tell you." I sat down, my good news and my hopes slowly draining from me. I looked at them, my family, and they looked back at me with expressions that were a mixture of discomfort and determination. My mother took a deep breath. "Your sister is moving to Boston next month to pursue her acting career." I knew this. Elena had been talking about it for months. She had decided she was going to be a famous actress. She had no plan, no real training, but she had the confidence of 1,000 peacocks. "Your father and I have been saving," my mother continued, "and we have a nest egg of $50,000. We've decided to give it to Elena." Elena preened, as if she had just won a crown. She took a sip of her coffee, a smirk playing on her lips. My heart stopped. What for her acting? "Yes, she needs the support. It's a very expensive city, and she needs to focus on her auditions, not on working some menial job," my mother explained, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "But what about my tuition?" I asked, my voice a fragile whisper. "What about my books, my fees? This could pay for the entire program." My mother's face hardened. It was as if a wall had come down. "Clara, you're a practical girl, you're smart, you can get a scholarship, you can take out loans. Elena has a dream, a big dream, she needs this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, I have to struggle and be in debt because I have a practical dream, because helping people is practical, and Elena gets a free pass because her dream is, what? More glamorous. More important. The words were tumbling out of me, fueled by a decade of swallowed anger. "Don't be dramatic," my mother snapped. "We know what's best. You'll find a way, you always do." "But you don't even know if she'll make it," I cried, turning to my sister. "This is crazy, Elena. You're going to waste this money. You have no idea what you're doing. You've never even been in a play." Elena's face contorted with anger. "How dare you? You're just jealous because Mom and Dad see how special I am. They believe in me. You're just a nobody." The silence in the room was absolute. My father stared at the tabletop, refusing to meet my eyes. My mother's lips were pressed into a thin, unforgiving line, and my sister, my own sister, had just called me a nobody. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me completely broken. "You're giving her $50,000, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "and you're giving me nothing. You don't think I deserve anything." My mother looked me dead in the eye, her gaze cold and unyielding. "No, Clara, you don't deserve anything. And it's not just about the money. You're not motivated. You don't have passion. You just plod along. You're not driven like your sister. So no, you don't deserve a cent." That was it, the final nail in the coffin. The verdict was delivered. You don't deserve anything. Those 4 words unlocked a kind of strength I didn't know I had. It wasn't the strength to fight for my share of the money. It was the strength to walk away from them all. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I looked at my mother, my father, and my sister. I looked at the 3 people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I saw strangers. "Okay," I said, my voice flat. "I understand." I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs to my room, and I started to pack. I didn't cry. I was too numb for that. I just moved methodically, folding my clothes, gathering my books, my laptop. My most prized possession was a laptop I'd saved 2 years to buy. I put it in my bag. As I zipped up my single suitcase, my father appeared in the doorway. "Clara, don't be like this. Your mother didn't mean." "Don't," I said, cutting him off. I didn't want to hear his weak excuses. "Just don't. You were sitting right there. You said nothing, as always." He had no response to that. He just stood there, the silent ghost in my life. I walked past him and went downstairs. My mother and Elena were still in the kitchen. They looked at me as I walked through. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, a hint of alarm in her voice. "We have to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said without pausing. "You've made yourself perfectly clear. I'm not wanted here." I opened the front door and stepped out into the bright afternoon sun. The world was so blindingly cheerful, so utterly indifferent to my personal apocalypse. I took a deep breath. It was the first breath of freedom I had ever taken. It tasted salty from my unshed tears. Behind me, I heard my mother's voice, sharp and brittle, as if she was the one who had been wronged. "Fine, go, see if we care. You are so ungrateful. You've always been a problem." I just kept walking. I didn't look back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a lot of money. But I had 2 working hands and a brain that was suddenly, wonderfully, terrifyingly clear. I was on my own. And I was determined to prove them all wrong. They believed I was nothing. I was going to become everything. The first few months were brutal. I crashed on a friend's couch for a few weeks, but I knew I couldn't impose forever. I found a tiny, dilapidated studio apartment in the worst part of town. It was so small that the kitchen, living room, and bedroom were all one room. The walls were thin, the paint was peeling, and the radiator clanked and hissed all night. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely and utterly my own. And the rent was cheap, which was the most important thing. I couldn't afford the prestigious state university anymore. The dream of a master's degree in social work felt like a distant star. But I had a bachelor's degree, and that was more than my parents thought I was capable of. I started looking for jobs. Any job, I would not be defeated. I worked as a waitress at a greasy spoon diner, enduring rude customers and aching feet. I took a night shift as a telemarketer, getting yelled at by people who just wanted to eat their dinner in peace. I cleaned houses, scrubbing toilets and mopping floors for wealthy people who barely acknowledged my existence. I had 3 jobs at one point, sleeping for only 4 or 5 hours a night. I was exhausted beyond belief, but I was surviving. There were nights when I would come home to my tiny apartment, collapse on my thin mattress, and just stare at the ceiling. I would wonder if it was worth it, if I should just give up, go back, and beg for forgiveness. But every time that thought entered my mind, I remembered the words, "You don't deserve anything," and I would feel a surge of defiance that would carry me through another day. I remember one night in particular. It was winter, and my apartment had no heat. The landlord had promised to fix the boiler, but he never did. I was shivering under 3 blankets, wearing all the clothes I owned. I was so hungry that my stomach ached, but I had to choose between buying food and paying for the bus fare to get to my waitressing job. I chose the bus fare. I had to keep going. That night, I cried. I cried for the first time since I had left. I cried for the little girl who just wanted to be loved. I cried for the teenager who tried so hard to be perfect. I cried for the woman who had been told she was worthless. I cried until I had no tears left. And then, in the silence of my freezing apartment, I made a promise to myself. I would never let anyone make me feel that way again. I would build a life so strong, so unshakable, that their words would become meaningless. I would become someone they could never ignore. And then, one day, I saw an ad. A local nonprofit organization that helped at-risk youth was looking for a program coordinator. It was an entry-level position, and the pay was modest. But it was exactly what I had wanted to do. It was in my field. I poured all the frustration and pain and hope I had into that application. I wrote a cover letter from the heart, telling them how I understood what it was like to be counted out, to be told you were worthless. I got the job. That job was the beginning of my real life. I worked with kids who were angry and scared and lost. They came from broken homes, from families that had given up on them. I saw a lot of my own story in their eyes. I helped them find their footing, get their GEDs, find jobs, and see a future for themselves. I poured all the love and support I had never received into these kids. I was their advocate, their cheerleader, their friend. And in the process, I found the thing my parents had said I didn't have: passion. There was one boy, Marcus, who reminded me so much of myself. He was 15, quiet, and invisible. His parents were addicts who had kicked him out when he was 13. He had been couch surfing and sleeping on the streets ever since. He had given up hope. He thought he was worthless. He told me that he didn't deserve anything good. I sat him down and told him my story. I told him about the $50,000, about my parents, about my sister. I told him about the words that had haunted me. You don't deserve anything. And I told him that I had been wrong to believe them. I told him that he deserved everything good in this world. I told him that his circumstances did not define his worth. Marcus looked at me with tears in his eyes. You really think so? He asked. I know so, I said, because I've been where you are, and I promise you it gets better, but only if you believe you deserve better. That conversation changed something in me. I realized that my parents' words didn't just hurt me. They had the power to hurt others, to create a cycle of self-doubt and self-destruction. I was determined to break that cycle, not just for myself, but for every kid who had ever been told they were worthless. I was good at my job, really good. The director of the organization, a woman named Martha, took me under her wing. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman with a heart of gold. She saw something in me. She saw my work ethic, my empathy, and my resilience. Clara, she said one day, about a year after I started, you're too smart and too capable to be stuck in this coordinator position forever. You need to go back to school. You need that master's degree. I've seen the work you do. You could run this place one day. You could run a whole network of places. I laughed. Martha, I can barely afford this tiny apartment. I can't afford grad school. Then find a way, she said simply. Don't let your parents' cruelty define your life. You're not fighting them anymore. You're fighting for yourself. And from what I've seen, you're a formidable fighter. Her words gave me a new kind of motivation. I started researching graduate programs again. I looked for schools with good part-time options. I researched scholarships, grants, and fellowships, and I found one. A prestigious fellowship, specifically for people who had worked in nonprofits and were dedicated to social justice. It was a full ride, plus a living stipend. I spent weeks on the application. I had to write essays, get recommendation letters, and go through a grueling interview process. I had to open up about my personal life, talking about the struggles that had driven me to this path. It was terrifying to be so vulnerable, but I did it. I had nothing left to lose. The day I got the acceptance letter, I was on the floor of my tiny studio apartment, sobbing. It wasn't joy. It was relief. It was validation. It was the universe saying, see, they were wrong, you do deserve this. 2 years after walking out that front door, I was a graduate student with a promising career ahead of me. I had moved to a slightly bigger apartment with a separate bedroom and a real kitchen. It wasn't fancy, but it was a palace to me. I had a few friends, and I was even starting to date a little. I had built a life, a good life, a quiet life, a life that had no room for the ghosts of my past. And then that ghost called me. The phone kept ringing. My mother's name, Mom, pulsed on the screen. It was a relic from my past life, a contact I had never gotten around to deleting. I should have deleted it. I should have thrown the phone across the room. But something compelled me to answer. It was the curiosity, I think. The sick, morbid curiosity of what they could possibly want from me now. Had Elena blown through the 50,000? Probably. Did they want to rub it in my face? Did they need something? Could it be they were calling to apologize? I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello." "Clara, oh thank God. Honey, it's Mom." Her voice was a shock to my system. It sounded old, tired. The sharp, brittle edge I remembered was gone, replaced by a kind of hesitant, fragile desperation. I felt nothing, just a vast, empty stillness. "Mom," I said, my voice flat. "Clara, how are you? We've been so worried about you. You never call, you never write. We didn't know if you were dead or alive." "Clearly, I'm alive," I said. "What do you want?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I heard her take a shaky breath. "It's your father. He's sick, Clara, very sick." I waited. I didn't feel the rush of anxiety or concern that I should have felt. The man who had been my father, who had stood by and said nothing while his wife dismantled his daughter's soul, was sick. It was information, nothing more. "He has cancer," she continued, her voice cracking. It's bad. The doctors, they say we don't have much time. He's been asking about you. We need you to come home." "I don't have a home there," I said. The words came out cold, and I didn't care. I had learned the hard way that this family could not hurt me if I didn't let them. "Clara, please, your father is dying. You can't be this cold. You have to put the past behind you. We're a family." "We were never a family, Mom. You made that very clear. You told me I didn't deserve anything. You gave my sister $50,000 and told me I had to fend for myself. So I did. I'm not coming back, so you can make me feel worthless one last time." My voice was shaking, not with sadness, but with a cold, simmering rage that I thought I had buried. Hearing her voice brought it all back, the raw, ugly pain of being rejected by the people who were supposed to love you most. "Clara, please," she begged. "Don't be like this. We made mistakes. I made a mistake. I was so worried about Elena, I didn't see how much I was hurting you. I'm sorry, honey. I'm so sorry." Her apology sounded genuine. It was the first time I had ever heard her say those words, but the wound was too deep. Apologies don't magically repair years of neglect and psychological damage. They don't pay for tuition. They don't give you back the feeling of being a valued member of the family. "I have to go," I said. I was about to hang up. "Clara, wait, please. Your father is not going to make it. He's asking for you. He needs to see you. He needs to make things right." I was silent for a moment. The thought of my father, the silent enabler, asking for me was strange. The man who couldn't even look at me during the worst moment of my life was suddenly desperate to see me. It felt like a trap. "Why?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Why does he suddenly want to see me? Is it because he's dying and wants to get rid of his guilt, or is there something else?" There was a long, agonizing pause on the other end. It's complicated," she said. "Please just come. We'll explain everything." "Give me a reason," I demanded. "Give me one reason why I should come, and don't say family. That word means nothing to me." There was another pause. I could almost hear her thinking, scrambling for an answer. I didn't want lies. I didn't want sentiment. "Because," she finally said, her voice so quiet I could barely hear it, "because you might be the only one who can help him." This I didn't expect. Help him how? What could I possibly do? "I can't talk about it over the phone. Please just come. Please, Clara, I'm begging you." I hung up. I stood there in my new, quiet apartment, the silence roaring in my ears. Help him? How could I help him? My father had been a successful accountant. He and my mother were comfortably retired. They didn't need my money. And if it was about emotional support, well, they had Elena for that. The golden child, the one they had invested everything in. Unless they didn't have Elena anymore. A cold suspicion began to creep into my mind. I had cut myself off from them completely. No social media contact, no family friends, nothing. I had no idea what had happened in their lives. Maybe the $50,000 investment hadn't paid off. Maybe Elena's acting career had failed spectacularly. Maybe she had been the one to abandon them. This thought, I have to admit, brought me a tiny, vindictive flicker of pleasure. It was a terrible thought, I know, but it was human. I had been treated like I was worthless, and my sister had been treated like she was the most precious gem in the world. If she had turned out to be nothing, then the fantasy of my parents regretting their decision was a tempting one. But that didn't explain why they needed me, or why my father was asking for me. My mind raced. Part of me was screaming to stay away. It was a trap. It was them, manipulating me one last time to get what they wanted, to make me the caretaker, to pull me back into their dysfunctional orbit. The other part of me, a tiny, scared part that still lived in a room in a house in my hometown, was driven by a frighteningly powerful curiosity. And, if I'm being completely honest, a sliver of hope. A forlorn, pathetic little hope that maybe, just maybe, they had finally realized their mistake. That maybe, at the end of his life, my father wanted to give me the apology and the love I had been denied. I tried to go back to my studies. I tried to focus on the book I was reading. But the words just blurred in front of my eyes. I kept seeing the look on my mother's face. I kept hearing her pleading voice. And my father, the ghost in my life, was dying. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to go. I told myself it was for closure. I would go, see my father one last time, listen to what they had to say, and then walk out of their lives forever. I would prove to myself that I was strong, that I could handle them, that their words could no longer hurt me. I was wrong. It was a long drive back to my hometown. The familiar landmarks, the trees, the road signs, felt alien to me, like I was seeing the world through a distorted lens. I pulled up to my parents' house, the same brick colonial I had grown up in. It looked smaller than I remembered. The manicured lawn, the polished door knocker, it all looked like a facade, a picture-perfect home that was hiding something ugly inside. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a long time. My heart was pounding. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I felt like a scared little girl again, about to face the monsters in her own home. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked up the driveway. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the quiet suburban street. My mother opened the door. She looked so much older. The color was gone from her hair, and there were deep lines etched around her eyes and mouth. She was thinner, almost frail. When she saw me, her face crumbled, and tears started streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Clara," she sobbed, reaching for me. "You came, thank you so much." I endured her hug. It felt strange and awkward. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, stiff and unmoving. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice flat. "He's in the bedroom. I'll take you to him." She wiped her eyes with a tissue and led me through the house. It was the same house, with the same furniture and the same family pictures on the walls, but it felt hollow. There was a smell of illness in the air, a sterile, medicinal scent. My mother stopped outside the door to their bedroom. "Before you go in, Clara, you need to know something. He's very weak. He's lost a lot of weight. The cancer is everywhere. He doesn't look like himself." "I understand," I said. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, be kind to him. He's been through so much. We've all been through so much." I didn't answer. I just pushed open the door. The room was dim, the curtains drawn. There was a hospital bed in the middle of the room. A machine was beeping softly, monitoring his vitals. And there, lying in the bed, was my father. He was a shadow of the man I remembered. His skin was a sickly gray, stretched taut over his prominent cheekbones. His hair was thin and white. He was so thin, he barely made a bump under the blankets. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't the man I remembered. This was a dying stranger. My mother whispered, "Clara's here, dear. Clara came to see you." His eyes flickered open. They were cloudy and unfocused at first. Then they found my face. A weak smile crossed his lips. "Clara," he rasped. "My Clara, you came." I walked to the side of the bed and stood there, looking down at him. I didn't know what to say. "Thank you, honey," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come for you," I said, the words cold and sharp. "I came because Mom said you needed me. I don't know why you would. I have nothing to give you." His smile faded. "No, Clara, you have everything to give. You have your future. You have my future." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confused. He turned his head to look at my mother. "Tell her, Martha. Tell her the truth. I'm too weak." My mother walked over and stood on the other side of the bed. She looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and shame. "Clara, when you left, your father was devastated. He blamed himself. He said he should have stopped me, should have stood up for you. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. That's when he went to the doctor, and they found the cancer." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "He's been in and out of the hospital. Treatments, therapy. It was a lot. And while he was going through it all, he realized he had to make things right. He had to correct a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of his life." "What mistake?" I asked, a cold feeling creeping down my spine. "The $50,000? That was a long time ago. I'm over it. I don't need your money. I'm doing fine." "Clara, please, just listen," my mother begged. "When your father got sick, he started thinking about his legacy, his will. He wanted to be fair. He wanted to right the wrong he did. He had changed his will. I was sure of it. They were going to offer me some small inheritance, a token gesture to assuage their guilt. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. "I don't want your money," I said, my voice firm. "You can keep it. Give it to Elena. She'll probably need it." My father let out a weak, broken laugh. "Elena," he wheezed. "Elena's gone, Clara. She took the money and ran. We haven't heard from her in over a year." This was the bombshell I had been half expecting. The golden child had abandoned her parents. I felt a flicker of vindication, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Then why are you telling me this?" I asked. "If there's no one left to give the money to, why am I here?" My father looked at me, and even through the pain and the medication, his eyes held a glint of clarity. "Because, Clara, you are the one who deserves it, all of it." "All of what?" I asked, my heart beginning to pound. My mother took a deep breath. "Your father didn't just have a small nest egg, Clara. He had a lot more. He was a very successful investor. The $50,000 was just a small portion of his money. He has a life insurance policy and a very large retirement fund and an investment portfolio. It's worth—" She hesitated, as if the number was too big to say out loud. "It's worth over $2 million, my father whispered, his eyes fixed on me. "And it's all for you, Clara, all of it." I stepped back from the bed as if I had been slapped. The room felt like it was spinning. $2 million. The money that had been used as a weapon against me, the money that had been held over my head to prove my worthlessness, was now being given to me as a deathbed apology. It was too much, it was too cruel. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, I don't want it. I don't want anything from you. You threw me away like garbage. You told me I didn't deserve anything. And now, at the last minute, you want to buy my forgiveness. You want me to be grateful. It's a trap. It's just another form of manipulation." My mother started crying again. "Clara, please, it's not a trap. It's not. He's trying to make amends. We both are. We were wrong. We were so wrong about you and so wrong about Elena. We were blinded. We were foolish. We want to give you what you've always deserved. We love you, Clara. We always have." I looked at my father. He was crying too, silent tears running down his gaunt cheeks. "I'm sorry, Clara," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I should have protected you. I should have been your father. It took me getting sick to see that you were the strong one. You were the one who never gave up. You were the one who built a life for yourself from nothing. You are everything I could have hoped for in a daughter. And I failed you." His words were powerful. They were everything I had ever wanted to hear. But I was so bitter, so scarred, that I couldn't accept them. I couldn't trust them. I felt like a stupid, naive child all over again, falling for the same old tricks. "You're only saying this because you're dying," I spat. "You're scared. You want to go to your grave with a clean conscience, but it doesn't work that way. You can't just erase everything you did. You can't buy my love with a check." "Clara, no," my mother cried. "It's not like that. We need you to understand. We need you to understand what happened with Elena, why we did what we did." "What is there to understand?" I yelled. "You loved her more, you thought she was special, you thought I was nothing, end of story." "No, Clara, there was more to it," my mother said, her voice desperate. She was a liar, she was a manipulator. We didn't know until after you left." My father coughed, a deep, rattling cough that shook his whole body. "She told us terrible things about you, Clara, that you were jealous of her, that you were trying to sabotage her career. She told us you were drinking, that you were doing drugs. She said you were toxic and that she was scared of you." I stood there frozen. "What? That's insane. I never did any of that. I barely ever left my room." "We know that now," my mother said, her face ashen. "But at the time, we believed her. We believed everything she said. That's why we acted so harshly. We weren't just favoring her. We thought we were protecting ourselves, protecting our family from you." The betrayal was now multi-layered. It wasn't just that they didn't love me. It was that they had actively believed I was a monster. My sister, my own sister, had poisoned them against me to get what she wanted. It was so evil, so calculated, that I couldn't comprehend it. "We were stupid," my father continued, his voice cracking. "We were fools. We let her play us. It was only after she took the money and vanished that we started to see the truth. We tried to find you, to tell you we were sorry. But you had disappeared. You had cut off all contact." "Of course I did," I cried. "I was humiliated. You told me I was worthless. Why would I ever want to talk to you again?" My mother sobbed. "I know, honey, I know. We hurt you so much. We don't expect you to forgive us. We don't deserve it. But we wanted to try to make things right. That's what the money is for. It's not a bribe, it's yours. It was always supposed to be yours." The room fell silent, save for the beeping of the machines and my mother's quiet sobs. I looked at my father, this pathetic, broken man who was trying to give me his fortune. I looked at my mother, the once proud matriarch, now a weeping mess. I felt nothing but contempt for them and a white-hot rage for my sister. "Why did you tell me she called me a nobody?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "You just stood there. You let her say it." My father closed his eyes. "Because I was a coward. Because I was angry at you for not being like her. Because Elena had us convinced that you were the enemy. I was a terrible father. And you expect me to just forgive all of this?" I asked. "We don't expect anything," my mother said quietly. "We just wanted you to know the truth. We wanted you to have a chance at the life you deserve, a life without debt, without struggle. You can use the money to travel, to buy a house, to start a foundation, anything. It's yours." I looked at them, and 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. I thought of my tiny apartment and my struggling friends. I thought of the kids I worked with, the ones who were always on the brink of giving up. I thought of the years of hard work, the sleepless nights, the empty fridge. And then I thought of Elena. I thought of her smug face as she held that check. I thought of her lies, her manipulations, her cruelty. She had not only stolen my family's love, she had stolen my chance at a future. She had tried to destroy me. The anger was boiling inside me, hotter than anything I had ever felt. It was a righteous anger. It was the anger of a person who had been wronged in the worst possible way and was finally being given a chance to fight back. I walked back to the side of my father's bed. I looked down at him. "I don't forgive you," I said. "And I don't forgive Mom. The damage you did to me, the years of feeling invisible, of feeling worthless, that can't be fixed. It doesn't matter if you were manipulated. You were supposed to be my parents. You were supposed to protect me, and you didn't." Tears were streaming down his face now. He was sobbing silently. "I know, Clara, I know." "But," I continued, my voice hardening, "I will take the money." My mother's head shot up. A look of desperate hope crossed her face. "Really, Clara, you will? Oh, thank God." I held up my hand to silence her. "But it's not for me. I don't want it for myself. I'm going to use it to build something. I'm going to start a foundation in my name. A foundation to help kids who have been cast out by their families, kids who have been told they're worthless, kids who are on the verge of giving up. I'm going to give them the chance that no one ever gave me." My mother's face fell. The hopeful light in her eyes was extinguished. "But Clara, that's a lot of money. Think of what you could do for yourself." "I've been thinking of myself for 2 years," I said. "I am doing just fine. but there are thousands of kids out there who aren't. I'm going to use this money to make sure they don't have to go through what I went through." My father coughed again, but this time a weak, rattling laugh emerged from him. "Of course you are," he whispered, a note of wonder in his voice. That's exactly what I hoped you would do. You always wanted to help people. You always had such a good heart, even when we broke it." I looked at him, and for a fleeting second, the anger in me softened. This was the man who was supposed to teach me right from wrong, who was supposed to show me what it meant to be loved. He had failed me so spectacularly, but in his final moments, he was finally, truly seeing me. "You made a lot of mistakes," I said softly. "But I believe you are sorry. I believe you see the truth now, and I'm going to take this opportunity to make sure something good comes from all the pain." We talked for a little while longer, about the foundation, about my work, about their lives, a hollow story of regret and mischances. Elena hadn't just abandoned them. She had left them with a mountain of debt from her failed career that they had to pay off, draining their retirement savings. The $2 million was the remains of a much larger sum, a sum they had foolishly squandered on a fantasy. It was the final, bitter irony. They had spent their lives and their fortunes on the wrong child. My father told me about the day I left. He said he had stood at the window and watched me walk down the street until I disappeared from view. He said he had felt like his heart was being ripped out of his chest, but he was too proud, too stubborn to run after me. He thought I would come back. He thought I would forgive them. He never imagined that I would vanish from their lives completely. "I searched for you, Clara," he said, his voice weak. "I hired a private investigator, but you had changed your phone number, moved away, deleted all your social media. You were a ghost. It was like you had died." "Maybe I did die," I said quietly. "The girl you knew, the one who wanted so desperately to be loved, she died that day. I had to kill her to survive." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm so sorry for that, but I'm so proud of the woman you became. You're so strong, so independent, you don't need us. You don't need anyone. That's what I should have taught you. Instead, I taught you that you were worthless. I'll never forgive myself for that." I didn't know what to say. His words were so raw, so honest. I could see the regret etched into every line on his face. I could see the pain in his eyes. It wasn't the pain of a man who was dying. It was the pain of a man who knew he had failed as a parent. My mother was sobbing quietly in the corner of the room. I had never seen her so broken. The strong, proud woman who had always been in control was now a mess of tears and apologies. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry." I wanted to feel something for them. I wanted to feel pity or sadness or even love, but all I felt was a vast, empty numbness. The emotions were there, buried deep beneath layers of pain and defense. I had learned to survive by not feeling. And now, even in this moment of supposed reconciliation, I couldn't let my guard down. "You should rest now," I said to my father, my voice softer than before. "We can talk more tomorrow." He nodded weakly. "Will you stay? Please, Clara, stay with us just for a little while." I looked at my mother. She was watching me with desperate, pleading eyes. She wanted me to stay. She wanted us to be a family again. I knew it was impossible. The damage was too deep. The wounds were too raw. But for some reason, I couldn't say no. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay for a few days." My mother let out a shaky breath of relief. "Thank you, Clara, thank you." I spent the next few days in that house, playing the role of the dutiful daughter. I helped my mother take care of my father. I cooked meals, cleaned the house, and sat by his bedside, talking about nothing and everything. It was strange and surreal. I felt like an actor in a play, performing a role that didn't quite fit. My father's health continued to decline. He was in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid and sometimes lost in a fog of pain and medication. When he was lucid, he would talk to me about the past. He would tell me stories from his childhood, stories he had never shared before. He told me about his own father, a strict and unloving man who had made him feel worthless. He told me that he had sworn he would never be like his father, but somehow he had ended up making the same mistakes. "I thought I was breaking the cycle," he said one afternoon, his voice barely a whisper. "But I was just repeating it. I did to you what my father did to me. I made you feel invisible. I made you feel like you didn't matter. I was so afraid of being like him that I couldn't see that I was already there. I held his hand and squeezed it gently. "You're not your father," I said. "You're a good man who made bad choices. There's a difference." He smiled weakly. "You always were the wise one, Clara. You always saw things so clearly. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you." I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that would change the past. My mother and I had our own conversations during those days. They were difficult and painful. She told me about the guilt that had consumed her since I left. She told me about the sleepless nights and the endless tears. She told me about the arguments she had with my father, about how they had both blamed each other for driving me away. "I was so wrapped up in Elena," she admitted one night, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold tea. "She had this way of making me feel like I was the best mother in the world. She told me everything I wanted to hear. And you were just always there. I didn't have to fight for your attention. I didn't have to worry about you. I took you for granted. I thought you would always be there. I never imagined that you would leave." "Mom, I didn't have a choice," I said, my voice flat. "You made it clear that I wasn't wanted. You told me I didn't deserve anything. What was I supposed to do?" She started crying again. I know what I said, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I was so wrong, Clara, so terribly wrong. You deserve everything. You always did. I was just too blind to see it." I watched her cry, and I felt nothing. I had spent so many years wanting her to see me, to acknowledge me, to love me, and now that she was finally doing it, I couldn't feel any satisfaction. It was too little, too late. But I didn't say that. I just sat there in silence, waiting for her tears to stop. My father died 3 days later. He passed away in his sleep, peacefully, with his family around him. My mother was holding his hand, and I was standing at the foot of the bed, watching the life fade from his eyes. It wasn't the dramatic deathbed scene I had imagined. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic. One moment he was breathing. The next moment he wasn't. The machine stopped beeping, and a nurse came in to confirm the time of death. My mother collapsed into sobs. She buried her face in his chest and cried like a child. I stood there, frozen, watching the scene unfold. I had expected to feel something, some sense of closure, but all I felt was emptiness. The funeral was small, just as my father had requested. A few of his old colleagues showed up, a neighbor or two, and my mother and me. Elena was conspicuously absent. I had expected her not to come, but it still stung. She had been the golden child, the one they had given everything to, and she couldn't even be bothered to show up for his funeral. My mother was devastated by Elena's absence. She kept looking at the door, hoping her daughter would walk through it, but she never did. The funeral ended, and my father was buried, and Elena was nowhere to be found. After the funeral, my mother and I sat in the living room of the house. It was the first time we had been alone together since my father's death. The silence was heavy, filled with all the words we couldn't say. "What are you going to do now, Clara?" my mother finally asked. "With the money, I mean." I had been thinking about this for days. The money was mine now. It was all in my name, sitting in a bank account, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. I could buy a house. I could travel the world. I could live a life of luxury and never work again. But that wasn't what I wanted. The money wasn't a gift. It was a burden. It was a reminder of everything I had lost and everything I had been denied. "I'm going to start a foundation," I said. "I told you that already." "Yes, but Clara, that's so much money. You could do so much for yourself. You could live a comfortable life. You could never worry about money again." "I don't want a comfortable life," I said. "I want a meaningful one. I want to help people who have been through what I've been through. I want to be the person I needed when I was younger. And this money is the tool I'm going to use to do it." My mother looked at me with a mixture of pride and sadness. "You really are your father's daughter," she said. "He was always trying to help people, too. He just didn't know how to show it." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The comparison to my father was too painful. A few days later, I packed my bags and prepared to leave. I had stayed long enough. I had done my duty. It was time to go back to my own life. My mother stood at the door, watching me load my suitcase into the car. She looked so small, so fragile. The years of guilt and regret had aged her beyond her years. "Will you come back and visit?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Will I ever see you again?" I thought about it. I thought about all the years of neglect, all the years of feeling invisible. I thought about the words that had haunted me for so long. You don't deserve anything. And then I thought about the woman I had become. The woman who had rebuilt her life from nothing. The woman who was strong enough to forgive, even if she couldn't forget. I'll try, I said, but I can't make any promises. She nodded, a sad smile on her face. I understand. I'll take whatever I can get. I got into my car and drove away, leaving my hometown behind for what I hoped was the last time. The next few years were busy. The Clara Foundation grew from a tiny office in a strip mall to a full-fledged organization with branches in 3 states. We built a residential facility for at-risk youth, a place where they could live in safety and dignity. We provided counseling, job training, and educational support. We gave kids like Marcus a second chance. I poured everything I had into the foundation. I worked long hours, sometimes sleeping at the office when the workload got too heavy. I traveled to conferences and fundraising events, telling my story to anyone who would listen. I became a public speaker, a fierce advocate for at-risk youth. The money from my father's estate was the seed that grew into a thriving organization. We raised millions more through donations and grants, but the initial $2 million was the foundation, the bedrock upon which everything else was built. I thought about my father often during those early years. I thought about his final words, his apologies, his regrets. I thought about the look in his eyes when he told me he was proud of me. It didn't erase the pain of the past. It didn't make up for the years of neglect, but it helped, in some small way, to ease the bitterness. My mother called me regularly. Our conversations were awkward and brief, but they were a lifeline of sorts. She told me about her garden and her book club and her new friends. She told me about her struggles to adjust to life without my father. She told me about her guilt, her endless, consuming guilt. I'm so sorry, Clara, she would say at the end of every call, for everything. And I would say, I know, Mom, I know. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just acceptance. I had accepted that my parents were flawed, broken people who had done terrible things. I had accepted that they would never be the parents I needed, and I had accepted that I didn't need them to be. I continued to build my life. I made friends. I found love. I adopted a dog, a scruffy little mutt named Charlie who was always happy to see me. I had a home, a real home, filled with warmth and laughter and joy. And then, one day, I got a letter from Elena. I was sitting in my office, going through the mail, when I saw the familiar handwriting. My heart stopped. I hadn't heard from my sister in years. I had no idea where she was or what she was doing. The letter was long and rambling, filled with desperation and regret. Elena told me that her acting career had failed spectacularly. She had blown through the $50,000 in a matter of months, spending it on parties, clothes, and drugs. She had gotten involved with the wrong people, made terrible choices, and ended up with nothing. She said she was sorry. She said she was sorry for the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty. She said she was sorry for poisoning our parents against me. She said she was sorry for calling me a nobody. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she wrote. But I had to tell you the truth. I'm so sorry, Clara. I was jealous of you. You were so good, so kind, so smart. I knew I could never measure up, so I tried to tear you down. It was wrong, it was evil, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I read the letter 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt a deep, profound emptiness. This was my sister, the golden child, the one who had everything handed to her, and she had thrown it all away. She had destroyed her own life, and she had tried to destroy mine. I wanted to feel something for her, pity maybe, or anger, but all I felt was nothing. She was a stranger to me, a ghost from a past I had left behind. I never responded to the letter. I couldn't. There was nothing I could say that would change what had happened. The damage was done. The wounds were too deep. I sometimes wonder what happened to Elena. I imagine her living on the streets, alone and destitute. I imagine her begging for money and getting turned away. I imagine her dying young, with nothing to show for her life but a trail of broken hearts and ruined lives. And I wonder if I should have reached out to her, if I should have tried to save her the way I had saved so many others. But the truth is, I couldn't. She was too toxic, too damaging. She had hurt me in ways that I was still healing from, and I couldn't risk letting her back into my life. I chose myself. I chose my own sanity, my own well-being, and that was the right choice. Now I'm sitting in my beautiful office, high above the city. The foundation has grown beyond my wildest dreams. We have branches in 5 states now, and we've helped thousands of kids. I have a life filled with purpose and meaning. I have friends, colleagues, and a family of my own making. My mother calls me less often now. She has accepted that we will never be the family she imagined. She has made peace with her loneliness, her guilt, her regrets. She has found a new purpose in volunteering at a local charity. She has become the person she always should have been. We talk about small things. The weather, her garden, my work. We never talk about the past. We never talk about Elena. And that's okay. The past is a closed book, a chapter that has been written and sealed. The future is what matters now. My parents gave my sister $50,000 and denied me a cent, saying, "You don't deserve anything." 2 years later, they called me back. They called me back because their golden child had failed them and they realized their mistake. They called me back because they were dying and they were scared. But I am not scared anymore. I am strong. I am successful. I am worthy. Not because of the $2 million they gave me. The money was just a tool. I am worthy because I made myself that way. I built a life from the ashes of their rejection. I found my own passion and my own purpose. I am Clara, and this is my story. It is a story of heartbreak and betrayal, but it's also a story of resilience, strength, and the power of choosing to rise from the ruins. I am not defined by what my parents did to me. I am defined by what I did for myself. And I am finally, completely whole. Every time I see a scared, angry kid walk through the doors of the foundation, I see myself, and I make them a promise. You are not worthless, I tell them. You are not invisible. You are a person of infinite value, and you deserve a chance. I give them the chance that no one ever gave me. I give them hope, support, and unconditional love. I show them that their past does not define their future, and I watch them transform from scared, broken children into confident, capable adults. That is my revenge, not anger, not bitterness, but kindness, compassion, building something beautiful from the wreckage of my past. The $50,000 my parents gave Elena is long gone, but what they gave me in the end was something far more valuable. They gave me a reason to fight. They gave me a reason to prove them wrong. They gave me the motivation to become the person I am today. So in a strange way, I'm grateful. Grateful for the pain, the struggle, and the rejection, because it made me who I am. It forged me into something strong and unbreakable. My parents gave my sister $50,000 and denied me a cent, saying, "You don't deserve anything." 2 years later, they called me back. And I answered the phone. That might sound like a small thing, a simple decision, the kind of thing you do without thinking. But for me, it was everything. It was the closing of a circle, the first step into a room I had sworn I would never enter again. And in the end, it was the first step toward freedom. I don't need their approval anymore. I don't need their love. I don't need their money. I have everything I need. I have my purpose, my passion, and my pride. I am Clara. I am enough. I always was.